Hello everyone, it's Terry here. Thank you so much for stopping by. For today's project, I am sharing a card that I created using some products from the Say It With Stamps collection. So let's get started. Okay, so for today's card, the main stamp set that I will be using is called Pocket Pals. And this one here is an old set, but it's a good one. You can see that there are a few little critters here, super adorable, and there's a little pocket that you could stick them in. But for today's card, I'm not using the pocket. And then for the die, I am using this unit alphabet die set. I will be using this to create the word friend on my card project. So when you receive the alphabet die, it does come attached. So what you want to do is separate each of the letters, and you could go ahead and use a snipping tool, but I found it quite easy to use my hands to just pull it apart. Okay, so to create my card panel, I went in with white cardstock that I trimmed down to 3.5 inches by 6.25 inches. And I am going in with the Pocket Pal stamps. I selected one of the critters here and I placed them in the center bottom of my card panel. I went ahead and stamped the image with an alcohol-friendly ink because I do plan on using alcohol markers to color in all of the little critters. So with this card, I am using the masking technique. So if you're unfamiliar with this technique, it's a card making technique that requires the use of masking paper. So what the masking paper does, it helps create a scene on your card panel that shows a lot of layering. So here you can see that I'm going in and stamping that same image onto masking paper, and I went ahead and fussy cut the image out. When fussy cutting the image out, I like to use small scissors and cut directly on the inked line. I also like to rotate the paper instead of the scissors. I found that my cuts were a lot cleaner this way. And once the masking paper image has been cut out, I went ahead and applied it over the stamped image onto our card panel. So with the masking paper here, when you apply it down, you're covering this image from receiving any unwanted ink on it. You'll get a better idea of this process in a bit. So I'm doing the same thing here with the little fox. I went ahead and stamped her down onto the card panel, and I left a bit of space in between the two. I left a little bit of space between the two critters because I want to go in with another stamp, but I want to create some sort of layering effect. So the idea here is I wanted to add in a third critter, but I wanted the third critter to stand behind the two that's already been stamped on the card panel. So I went ahead and fussy cut another masking paper for the fox and applied that on top of the image. Now going in with the third critter stamp, I placed that between the tiger and the fox. I did want a little bit of height on this third critter, so I placed it a little bit higher than the other two. Now going in with the same ink, I stamped that down onto the card panel. Since we're stamping the third image onto the two mask image, we're stamping ink only on areas that we want it to. So the inks that's laid on top of the tiger and the fox, it won't show through since the masking paper is blocking that area. So I went ahead and did the same process. I stamped that onto masking paper and fussy cut that off screen. But since this bear is a little higher than what it's supposed to be, I added a little strip of masking paper towards the bottom just to fill in that little area. Then going in with the other critters in the stamp set, I went ahead and did the same thing until the bottom portion of the card panel was filled with critters. So I stamped, I masked, I stamped, I masked, I stamped, and masked. It's a bit of a process, but the outcome, it's worth it. So now that all of the critters has been masked off, I wanted to go ahead and create a background. So here is a look at the stencil that I will be using. This one is called 3-piece stripes. What I love about this stencil kit is that it has 3 pieces, so you could do a lot of different types of layering. It's really nice because you can use each stencil individually, or you can layer on top of one another to get a different look. For today's card, I am only using the horizontal stripes. So here I'm using some of the pixie dots and applying it on the back of my cardstock. I went ahead and placed that onto my work surface. I like using the pixie dots because it's removable. So when I place it on top of my work surface, it doesn't budge when I'm ink blending. So now going in with the horizontal striped stencil, I place that over my card panel and I'm going in with a bunch of different color of hybrid inks and I'm blending that all in using a blending brush. I'm going in rainbow order. So I'm using a lighter pink shade for the red and then continuing that with orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. You will see that towards the bottom of the card panel that we will start blending over the critters. Just keep in mind that they are all masked, so the ink blending part that we're doing for the background won't get on the critters. So that's a nice thing about masking. It's blocking off all the areas that we don't want any ink on it. So after the ink blending has been done, I just flipped it over to the back and remove all of the pixie dots. It comes off quite easily. So here I think is one of the best part is removing all of the masking paper. You can see how nice and clean all of the critters are just because we use the masking paper to cover them up. I really love this technique because you could do so many things with it. It creates such a nice scene. Okay, so now it's time for coloring. I am using alcohol markers here. You can use anything that you have on hand, but I prefer alcohol markers because it blends beautifully. So I will go ahead and speed up the process and add a little music here. And I will also note a time above just in case if you're not into the coloring part, you can go ahead and skip it to that time. Okay, I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, I am back. So now that the coloring has been finished, I want to go ahead and die cut the word friend. I like using the grids on my craft mat, and I'm lining up the word friend. And then using the pink pixie tape from Thermoweb, I went ahead and taped the dies together. I like doing this because it keeps the dies straight when I'm running it through my die cutting machine. So I went ahead and taped that to the front of my card panel, making sure that it's straight, and I ran that through my die cutting machine. So after I ran that through the die cutting machine, I went ahead and removed the pink tape. So here you can see all of the die cut pieces. Ultimately, you can create 2 cards with this technique. So using the negative piece on one card and the positive piece on another. For today's card, I am only using the negative card panel with our colored images. Okay, so going in with the sentiment, I wanted to add a little more dimension to it. So what I like to do is I like to cut multiple pieces of the letters and layer it together using liquid adhesive. And today I'm using Ultra Bond from Thermoweb. Okay, so to assemble the card together, I am using the card blanks from Say It With Stamps. This one is the size number 6 and it fits perfect on the mini slimline. I really like this because it comes pre-scored, so all you have to do is use your bone folder and just enforce the score line. I then went ahead and adhered the card panel to the card blank using liquid adhesive. Okay, so now it's time to inlay all of the letters. I went ahead and applied liquid adhesive onto all of the letters and placed that onto the card panel. Making sure to also glue in the pieces inside the letter R and the letter D. For the sub-sentiment on this card, I decided to go with this awesome sentiment from the Congrats Sentiment stamp set, and this one says, "You're freaking awesome." You don't see a lot of stamp set with this type of wording, and I really appreciated it in the stamp set. I know a lot of my friends would really like this. So I went ahead and stamped that onto the card panel using black ink. Then using my bone folder, I wanted to smooth out all the edges, so I went in and ran that throughout the card panel, just making sure everything was adhered together. And lastly, I like to use my gel pen to create highlights. So I went in with that and added highlights throughout the card panel. Okay, and there you have it. The card is now complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and please don't forget to thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.